Welcome to GPS, God's Prophetic Surprises, the show where we take up the book of Revelation and seek to make it surprisingly relevant for today's world. And I'm Jon Paulien from the Loma Linda University School of Religion, and we have
Fiona Chambers from the Kalamasa Church.
And I'm Philip Milosavljevic from the Loma Linda University Church.
I'm Shifra Fapuliai from Campus Hill Church.
All right. Now, in our last program, we got into chapter 10, verse 6 of the book of Revelation, but we didn't get far. And we left a whole bunch of questions we can't wait to get at.
Today there will be no more delay.
No more delay. We're going to understand this verse.
This is the time of the end.
Yes, that's right. Why don't we read it again, verses 5 to 6 of Revelation 10, and maybe add verse 7.
All right.
Because I think we made reference to that the last time.
Okay, I'll read it. Then the angel whom I saw standing on the sea and the land raised his right hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created heaven and what is in it, the earth and what is in it, and the sea and what is in it. There will be no more delay. But in the days when the seventh angel is to blow his trumpet, the mystery of God will be fulfilled, as he announced to his servants, the prophets.
All right. So you remember in the last program, we told the story of William Miller, who saw in this text very, very great relevance for the end of time, for the period of history in which we are. And he was very excited about it, but he saw this time no more as the second coming of Jesus. And when he calculated that the time no more would happen in the year 1844, he believed that that's when Jesus would come. And there was a great disappointment for some 100,000 people in the northeastern part of the United States at the time. So let's take a look and see, first of all, he missed the word but in verse 7. In the Greek, it's Allah, which Greek has actually 2 or 3 different conjunctions that can say, maybe not. But this is the hardest one. This is the capital B, but. This is but, okay?
Whoa.
Forget everything I just said. We're going in a different direction. Time will be no more, but is kind of a signal, well, yeah, but there's going to be a surprise. God has a prophetic surprise here. Instead of Jesus coming at the end of Daniel's time prophecies, there's going to be another period of time before the 7th trumpet sounds. And all of that is buried into verse 7. But I promise that when we get to chapter 10, verse 6, we would learn something about how John uses the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And you'll notice here, would somebody read verse 5 and 6 once again?
The angel whom I saw standing on the sea and on the land raised up his hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that are in it, the earth and the things that are in it, and the sea and the things that are in it, that there should be delay no longer, in KJV version.
All right, so what I see here in the Greek is the angel raises his right hand to heaven and swears by the one who lives forever and ever. Now, in the book of Revelation never quotes the Old Testament. Scholars debate about that. Some think maybe there are 2 quotes or 5 quotes or 13 quotes. In the way that we normally think of quotes, no, I don't think the book of Revelation ever quotes the Old Testament. You never get like 15 words all together in one place from another place. Like Mary had a little lamb, her fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. That's a quotation. And it's about 15 words in common. Never happens in the book of Revelation that the Old Testament is taken up in that complete way. It is by allusion. And there are 5 major words in common between Revelation 10:7 and Daniel 12 10:6, and Daniel 12:7. And those words are right hand, heaven, swear, living, the one who lives forever. You have 5 major words. Would somebody read Daniel 12, verse 7? And listen very carefully when you put these texts side by side. Daniel 12, verse 7.
And I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the stream. He raised his right hand and his left hand toward heaven, swore by him who lives forever that it would be for a time, times, and half a time, that when the shattering of the power of the holy people comes to an end, all these things would be finished.
All right. Do you see the echo
Yeah.
Yes.
of Daniel 12 in Revelation 10?
Definitely.
All right. So this language, in both cases, you have a location. Here, he's got the mighty legs, right?
Yeah.
One on the sea, one on the land, and holding the scroll and all the rest of that. In Daniel 12, you have an individual who's hovering over the river.
Yes.
So you have a location. Then you have this oath, raising the hand, swearing an oath by the one who lives forever. All right? So both texts have that in common. And then they give a statement about time. In Revelation 10, it's time will be no more. In Daniel 12, it's time, times, and half a time. And what do we know about the time, times, and half a time in the book of Daniel? Any of you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the Hebrew understanding, time was in reference to a year. So you have time, and how they calculated time was based on 360 days, as opposed to how we view a year to be 365. So you take time, 360, and times is two of those. So you have now 360 plus 360 plus 360, and then half of that being 180. So that gives us a number at
1,260 days.
Yeah. So that's how I read that reference.
Okay. So in Daniel, you had these time prophecies. And an interesting thing about it is that these time prophecies seem to have been bigger than that. 1,260 days is not that long a time. Most people can make it through college in just a little bit more than that. All right, so it's not a huge period of time. In Daniel, though, you had a prophecy of great kingdoms. In Daniel 7, for example, you have the lion, the bear, the leopard, and this amazing beast. And each of them represented kingdoms that lasted hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And then now you have the biggest, baddest kingdom of them all, and it lasts 3.5 years. It's kind of a letdown.
Yeah.
How could this be the big one? And it's much less. So right there within the text is a hint that maybe don't take the 1,260 days literally, that maybe there's some sort of a symbol involved. And one thing you see in the Hebrew Bible is that a day is often equivalent to a year. You have 6 days, and the 7th day is the Sabbath. But the farmers had 6 years, and the 7th year was a Sabbath for the land. The land gets to lie fallow and restore its strength. So within the Hebrew Bible, you often have this parallel between days and years. So it's a hint. The Bible isn't explicit on this, but it's a hint that maybe we read those prophecies differently. And when you see Daniel in terms of multiple years, we don't have time to get into that in this program, but that's how William Miller came to conclude that the prophecies of Daniel wound up in the 19th century. They wound up in the middle of his time in history. And so, Daniel's time prophecies is what this time is. Time will be no more is Daniel's time prophecies are up. Now here's the secret. I promised you a secret. Prophetic surprise? Okay. C.H. Dodd, he studied how the New Testament used the Old Testament. He studied all the quotations of the Old Testament in the New, and how did they compare with each other? And he discovered something very interesting. When we quote a text, what do we usually do with it? So, well, this proves what I'm saying.
Yeah.
All right? I'm going to the
Evidence.
Bible. This proves what I'm saying to you.
Confirmation bias.
Yeah, it's a confirmation, okay? And so let's go to Matthew 2, all right? We don't have to look at it. Let's just go in our minds. In Matthew 2, Jesus goes down to Egypt. Why?
To run from.
Because the prophet said, out of Egypt I will call my son. So Matthew says there's a prophecy in the Old Testament that says that the Messiah will have to go to Egypt. This is the fulfillment of that prophecy. You go to Hosea, which is what he's quoting, there's no prophecy there. He's describing the Exodus. Out of Egypt I called my son. It's not a proof text of Matthew. He's not using it that way. He's using that quote as a pointer to the whole context.
I see.
Throughout the Old Testament, the Exodus was a model for God's mighty acts in the future.
Right.
Hosea is describing the Exodus. Matthew says Jesus is the new Exodus of the new Moses
Yep.
and the new Israel. The original Moses was threatened as a baby, and all the babies got killed but him. Jesus was threatened as a baby, all the babies got killed but him. So Jesus is a new Moses who's going to bring the people out of Egypt. So Matthew quotes Hosea to point to the whole Old Testament. Daniel 12:7, what's so special there? Because it's the climax of a series in Daniel that goes back to Daniel 8. And in Daniel 8, you have a prophecy of 2,300 days, 2,300 evenings and mornings. The prophecy is given, and then an angel comes to explain it to Daniel. And Daniel doesn't get it. He faints. The angel comes back in chapter 9 to explain it to Daniel. He gives him a little more, and Daniel can't handle that. Angel comes back in Daniel 11 and starts explaining again.
Whoa.
Daniel 12 is not an isolated text. It's the completion of the explanation of the prophecy in Daniel 8. So the author of Revelation quotes Daniel 12:7 to point to all the time prophecies of Daniel, to point to that whole prophetic cycle. The book of Daniel predicted a time when Daniel's sealed book would be opened up, and there would be knowledge and understanding of prophecy. When William Miller read Revelation 10, he realized this is about Daniel 12. This is about Daniel 8. This is about a time when all those prophecies will come to an end. And what will happen at that time? The time of the end.
Right.
And in the time of the end will be the final proclamation of the gospel. So William Miller thought that this text was pointing to the second coming of Jesus. What it was pointing to was the last period of Earth's history. And that's a completely different perspective. He missed the but. He missed the Daniel context, and therefore didn't get the text completely together. Does that make it any sense? I covered too much ground with no illustrations. It's kind of nice to have charts and PowerPoints and the rest of that. What are we going to do with this? What are we going to do with this? All right, that's the question.
I mean, I think you also then should explain to me this idea, the but and the reason why this is really even that important. Because this is technically the period that we're in right now, right? Before the seventh trumpet sounds. So what's the significance? I mean, maybe you guys have something to add to that one, but I mean, I'm just wondering, what is the significance of all of that for us today, in this moment, in this space, in our time, in our world, here? Why was this given to us? Like, why did God have Revelation 10, 1 through 7 orchestrated to be in this space? What is this guiding us to understand more so?
When I go back to the little children and giving them a surprise, and in storytelling, one crucial element in order for you to deliver a story well is the element of suspense. And right at the element of suspense, like everybody leans in and they're quiet and they're listening. So my first reaction is like, hush, pay attention, something is coming, like stay at the edge of your seat. I don't know, like that's, I read that and it's like, wait a second.
One of the big issues of the New Testament is the delay of the second coming of Jesus.
Yeah.
And what this text does is project that delay into the end time period.
Yeah.
When the end time comes, when all the prophecies of the Bible kind of come to their end, we would expect, now God's going to do this.
Yeah.
And God is letting us know ahead of time, no, there's going to be a delay. Did he do that in the New Testament? Don't you remember the parable where the landowner goes away into a far country for a long time?
Yeah.
That's Jesus talking. So he was preparing them for the delay. Evidently, they didn't hear that too well because people got upset that Jesus didn't come in the first 5, 10, 15, 20 years after his ascension to heaven. So he is pointing out, when the end of time comes, you're going to have another delay, another disappointment.
I guess maybe
Yikes.
the practical question would be, why and what am I supposed to do now? You know, I think that's probably one of the most significant questions that we probably should answer in our churches or church contexts or even academic centers for young students. Like, what are you supposed to be doing now? Okay, so he's delayed. So now what?
Well, can I give you the big picture answer from Revelation?
Yeah.
What happens in this time of the end is a remnant appears. And that is spelled out in more detail in chapter 12, which we'll get to later. But this remnant appears, and the remnant is designed to prepare the world for the coming of Jesus. Jesus doesn't want to just come out of the blue, surprise, ready or not, here I come, okay? Instead, he wants the world to be prepared for his return. And so in the book of Revelation, in chapters 10 through 14, you have messages that God wants the world to hear before the end of time. And we're going to be doing that together on this program. We're going to go through all of those verses and probe what those messages might be and what difference they might make even in the 21st century. All right? So the whole idea is God would raise up a movement, a message, and this is the conviction behind the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The Seventh-day Adventist Church was founded in the midst of Miller's disappointment. Yeah. And you might say, wow, so you started with a mistake. Great start. Well, very human start. But it's not about the church. It's not about institutions. Institutions have value in that they provide efficiency and organization for a movement. But what counts here is the message and preparing people for the second coming of Jesus. And he wanted people to know that it might not work quite the way they expected. Surely, even after Miller, the early Adventists, they believed, they said, well, he's going to come in 1845, or maybe 1851. And then others said 1884. They kept coming up with dates for him to come. But he just left it open. He says, no. He says, I will come when I'm ready to come. I will come at the time that's best for you. And what would that time be? What would be the best time for God to come? What do you think?
I have so many emotions. Let's see here. One side of me wants him to come yesterday, and the other side of me wants him to wait.
So why do you want him to come?
Reasons. The yesterday one is so that suffering will be no more and to see him face to face.
Beautiful.
It takes away the weight. Wanting him to wait is because there's the the getting ready in the oven. And if it's not ready, then he's not ready to come. And so then I understand the delay.
If Jesus came tomorrow, what would that mean for this world?
A half-baked cookie? I don't know.
In what
Why
sense?
do you say that? Yeah.
In what sense a half-baked cookie?
I feel like in my ministry, like you start allowing kids to connect with Jesus, and it's like they're kind of there and they're like starting to get it, and then he comes and it's like I didn't have time to give them like the full picture, the full experience. I would feel like, yikes, did they make it? Like were they able to connect?
I mean, that's what's happening, though, in terms of an argument that's being built. Like, why does God delay? Because more people are continually being born and more people continue to die. So what is the point of delaying any further? I mean, are more people going to hear?
And
If
then
we wait another 100 years? I mean, what is beneficial to the wait?
can I complicate your question?
Okay, go ahead.
I don't have answers.
Go ahead.
But complicate your question. And then to know that the Holy Spirit is able to do in an instant what would otherwise take a lifetime. So then why wait so many lifetimes?
For more suffering, more pain, more heartache to occur.
And then it comes back to trusting in God, right? Like it's my only resilience.
Yeah.
Is having had my personal walk with God. You are a good God. You are a trustworthy God. So then I try to take my personal trust in God to these greater pictures with the great controversy and this great delay.
Yeah.
And say, I've got to trust that this great delay, like in my personal delays, are great delights and great deliverance. I just have to trust.
Jon, does it have anything to do with the end of the verse in Revelation 12:7, where it says, in that when the shattering of the power of the holy people comes to an end? Like, is it related to that
in Daniel?
in Daniel?
Well, it seems to me that in Daniel, the 1260-year period, if you date it where Miller and others dated it, that it was from like 538 to 1798, it was a period of time when there was a lot of suffering and persecution and war and all the rest of that. And that God's people were suffering even under Christian domination. In other words, Christians were killing each other over differences of doctrine.
Right.
And that period took place over more than 1,000 years. And when that was complete, this
says-
prophecy of the 1260 would be over.
Yeah, all these
Yeah.
things would be accomplished.
Yeah. But I think there's only one place in the Bible where God actually explains the delay. There's times when he projects it, like the seven thunders, and even here, you think it's coming to end, but, it's not until the seventh angel blows his trumpet that the mystery of God will be finished. So even with the end of Daniel's time prophecies, the mystery of God, which we'll talk about later, isn't completed. There's only one text, and that's 2 Peter. Since we've gone this place, let's take a look at it. It tells us exactly why there's a delay. 2 Peter, chapter 3.
That Almighty.
I'll keep you in suspense.
He's not slow.
Yeah, 2 Peter, chapter 3, and verse 9. Somebody want to read that for us?
Okay, I'll read. The Lord is not slow about his promise, as some think of slowness,
Yep.
but is patient with you, not wanting any to perish, but all to come to repentance.
See, I think you caught that with your children, Viana, that you minister to. The realization if Jesus came tomorrow, many of those kids wouldn't be ready.
You should be a children's pastor.
And wouldn't that be a tragedy? And
Yeah.
God says, I'm willing to wait so that as many as possible can become ready.
Beautiful.
And what is God ultimately waiting for is the recognition we have this universal conflict between Christ and Satan, between good and evil, that's going on. And the only way to resolve the conflict, you could resolve it by force,
Yes.
but that's not what God is going to do. The only way God is willing to resolve the conflict is for everyone to be convinced that God was fair, that he was loving, and that he was worthy of our trust.
By the
Wants
power of
everyone
love.
to be convinced, but that's by the power of love, yeah. You see, and that takes time. It takes time
Yeah.
for people to come to that. And so he waits. And here's the interesting thing. The longer God waits, in the ultimate sense, the better he looks. Because it shows that he's just not going to fix this thing by harsh means. He's not going to demand his way,
Yeah.
etc. Instead, he's going to wait and let people come to their own conclusions
Yeah.
in their time
Yeah.
and in their place.
I'm looking forward to when the mystery of God will be finished. As much
Yeah.
as I'm loving the surprises
Yeah.
and the uncovering of mysteries and decoding of things, I had this thought that the mystery of God, yes, would be finished, but not the wonder of God. As you were saying a few episodes ago, as the years of eternity roll, you know, we'll still be learning of things. And I think of it in terms of learning and being in awe, growing in wonder of the love of God. So it's revealed, it's there to see, but it takes eternity to explore. So the mystery is there. It's finally opened, right? When all is said and done. But we get eternity to explore it. And I'm looking forward to that day when the mystery in that sense is done, but the wonder still goes on.
What is the Greek of the mystery of God? What does that say?
Well,
Is that euangelizo? That's the gospel, but I don't know if that...
yeah, the mystery of God is mysterion, ton theon. The mystery of God is proclaimed, and that's euangelison. It's the verb for gospel.
Yes.
We'll come back to that in the next program. But the mystery of God being gospelized,
Gospel, yeah.
that's the final proclamation of the gospel. And that comes between the close of Daniel's time prophecies and the sounding of the seventh trumpet. Now, one more thing, concluding thought. We've connected this with the prophecies of Daniel, but we also connect it with the sixth trumpet. There's a point, a day, an hour a day, a month and a year, there's a point in time where the sixth trumpet begins. And that is the gathering for Armageddon of Satan's forces. Now we see here in chapter 10, that is also the beginning point of the proclaiming of the mystery of God for the last time. God is raising up his people.
Yeah.
Sixth trumpet is about Satan raising up his people for the end time battle of Armageddon that is coming. So that's the big picture that is here. And God is giving us a clue we can know at what point in history that's going to happen. He's preparing us for these final events. And that, I guess, would be God's prophetic surprise for this week. We'll see you again next week as we continue with Revelation 10:7.